So there's this concept in pre-calculus known as the difference quotient, and the setup for the difference quotient was something along the lines of f of x plus h minus f of x over h. And this is a pre-calculus concept, which is a precursor to what you're learning in calculus. And the goal of this question is to simplify, and there's three ways this is typically presented. You're either going to be simplifying by either factoring, a common denominator, or a conjugate. For example, you might be given the following function, let's say f of x equals x squared plus 3x, and I'll ask you to evaluate the following difference quotient. So you would start by plugging in f of x plus h. So what that means is we're going from input to output. Wherever there is an x, we're now replacing with x plus h, making this function become x plus h squared plus 3 times x plus h. That's the f of x plus h part. Minus, minus. Now it's just f of x, the original function itself, but you want to put in parentheses just in case you have to do any type of distribution of the negative. All over h. So that's the first part. Now, again, the goal of this is to simplify, and honestly, the goal of this question is to reduce that bottom h eventually. That's eventually what you're going to be doing in each one of these cases. So now the next step is to go ahead and distribute, FOIL out each of these terms overall. So we got this one to do. We're going to FOIL in just a second. We got this one. We're going to go ahead and distribute the 3 for the second one. And the last one, we're going to have to go ahead and distribute the negative overall. So by doing so, we're going to get, so x plus h squared is x plus h plus, well, x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. That's what this piece is right here. Then we distribute plus 3x plus 3h. Then this one right here, distribute minus x squared minus 3x all over h. And at this point, things should start to cancel. Like you'll see x squared minus x squared and 3x minus 3x. And you notice what's in common on the top, on the numerators, there's an h you can factor out. So we're going to factor an h out, leaving you with 2x plus h plus 3 all over h. And here we go, it reduces. And that'd be your final answer for this difference quotient. And this was done by factoring ultimately. The next one might be by common denominator. So for another problem here, let's see you're given the following: f of x is equal to, let's do 1 over x plus 3. And again, they say something like evaluate the difference quotient, the whole f of x plus h minus f of x all over h, all over h. So here we go. Once again, the first part is, well, we got a x plus h. We're going to substitute in for every x. So in doing so, we'll have 1 over x plus h plus 3, minus because of the minus. Now the original function, f of x, there it is. 1 over x plus 3 all over h. Now here, we need to find a common denominator. And the common denominator is just simply multiplying these by switching them by each other. So on the left, we multiply by x plus 3 over x plus 3. And on the right, we make this a little bit wider because I can do that. Love technology, x plus h plus 3 over x plus h plus 3. And I do recommend pausing the video each step and making sure you follow along, just to make sure it's at your pace. Next up, now, we look at the numerator. 1 times x plus 3 is just x plus 3. Negative 1 times x plus h plus 3. We're distributing that, bring it back, that negative. So minus x minus h minus 3. All over our common denominator now, x plus 3 times x plus h plus 3. Now, a little step here. If it's all divided by h, that's equivalent to multiplying by 1 over h. Dividing by is multiplying by the reciprocal. At this point, x minus x, 3 minus 3. Hey, what's left on top? That negative h. Well, that will reduce with the h on bottom, leaving you with just a negative 1 on top because of this reduction. That's negative 1 over x plus 3 times x plus h plus 3. So there you go by common denominator. Lastly, let's do a square root. This time, we'll go ahead and work with f of x equals the square root of x plus 3. And again, you might be asked to evaluate the difference quotient, f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. So here we go. F of x plus h. So once again, wherever there's an x, you're going to replace with an x plus h. Giving you the square root of, I'm going to put it right here actually, the square root of x plus h plus 3. Minus the original function f of x all over h. In this case, we're multiplying by what's called the conjugate. The conjugate differs in the middle sign. So instead of a minus, it's going to be a plus here. So I'm going to multiply by the square root of x plus h plus 3 plus the square root of x plus 3, again, over itself. And it's okay if you have a square root in the denominator. We're dealing with an expression here. We're not like rationalizing numbers like we normally would. So the first term squared, because ultimately this is like saying a minus b times a plus b. That's what it is, a minus b, a plus b. And you multiply those together, you get a squared minus b squared. So it's the first term squared. So square root squared is itself minus the second term squared. Be careful, because you're going to have to distribute that negative all over h times, let's move that up, square root of x plus h plus 3 plus the square root of x plus 3. Now at this point, you can distribute that negative or realize x minus x, 3 minus 3. And what's left on top is that h, which will reduce to that bottom h, leaving you with just 1 on top over the square root of x plus h plus 3 plus the square root of x plus 3. And those are 3 different scenarios. We were just asked to set up what's called a difference quotient. And it might be in terms of x, it might be in terms of a, but otherwise, here you go dealing with a square root where you simplify by using a conjugate, common denominator, or factoring. But in all 3 cases, what did I eventually do? All 3 cases, you'll note at the very end, I crossed off that h over h. Next up, I crossed off that h over h. And lastly, I crossed off that h over h. And there you go with 3 examples of dealing with each type of scenario.